the most ferocious sport.
Oh, I knew it was going to explode!
Where the rivalries run deep.
Here we go.
These games hit harder.
Oh!
Make your heart beat faster.
This is unbelievable!
Divide cities, friends, families. These wins mean more.
Oh! He's hit the post! The ball is disappearing! It's Wellesby! The glory to Kynor!
It's bigger than 2 points. Unrivaled passion, unparalleled pride, bragging rights.
Magic Mike delivers!
Nerve-shredding drama.
Davis! It was always going to be on!
Redemption.
Incredible try! Tommy Atkinson!
There's nothing like league, and nothing hits harder than Rivals Round.
Yeah, it's one of the best weekends of the sporting calendar, isn't it? And it is better than ever this year. Rivals Round in the Betfred Super League, and the top 4 facing off in the 2 biggest rivalries this sport has to offer. I cannot wait for these 6 games of rugby league this weekend. Alongside me to go through them, Kevin Brown and Carl Amor. Gents, Carl, I'll come to you first.
Yep.
How good's this weekend?
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's the game that all the players will tell you at the start of the year, the one that they always know that's coming, and the one that all the fans get excited about. So, lots of big games, and also the impact on what the results of these games are going to mean. Usually around this time of year, we see the runners and riders for the rest of the competition almost a third of the way through, but all those that top 4, there's not a lot splitting them at the moment. So can't wait, really can't.
Kev, I know 2003 and 2004 are kind of topping up your after dinner routine, but it must be just incredible to play in.
Oh, there's nothing like it. Even a cup final, I've played in cup finals that don't have the adrenaline running through your veins as much as these do. And I think the fact this year as well, more so than ever, they're all doing really well at the same time. So you've got the top 2 going against each other, 3 and 4 going. It's just sets up for a classic. Normally you say it doesn't matter about form, and it doesn't, but the fact that they both need these points to outdo each other in the table as well is even more incentive to get the win. So both sold out, and the other games don't look too shabby either.
No, I did a couple of pieces last year on the 2 Good Friday derbies, and one of the things that kept getting said was, well, the difference between Wigan and Saints is that you know that they're both going to be at the top most of the time, whereas the whole derby is kind of they've always been, one's been at the top, one's been towards the bottom. First versus second this year, Carl. It's a really kind of different feel to what is already quite an intense game.
Well, for a long time, over the 30-year history of Super League, Hull FC have been largely known as the bigger club, and obviously what's happened there the last couple of seasons, they've been way down the bottom of the table, but it feels like this year under John Cartwright that they've started to find a bit of form, and the table shows that. So for me, I think it's probably the biggest derby in a long time. We looked at the Challenge Cup game, but I'd almost argue now with that out the way that this is as big as it's come for both of these 2 clubs. I can't remember these 2 being in a position that they're in now, first and second, with the winner of it going to go climb to the top of Super League table after the Easter break. So for me, it's absolutely massive, Lewis.
The scary thing for Hull FC is as well, I listened to John Cartwright after the game against Warrington, and he said we've still not put an 80 minutes performance together. I agree with Kyle. The fact that Will Price has had a couple of weeks now under his belt, training, knowing his teammates, I thought he was sensational at fullback for the Black and Whites. I think he's going to be a threat. Is Mikey Lewis going to play? If he does play, is he going to be fully fit? There's so many storylines in this one, and I'm not sure who I call on this one. I was a bit underwhelmed by the derby in the cup, and I don't think it'll be the same. I think this one's going to have fireworks.
Well, you've got about 15 minutes to work out who you're going to pick in this one, because before we look at what's to come, let's just touch on what's been before, and a fascinating round actually, round 7 in the Betfred Super League. Starting off with Leeds, Kyle, who laboured to win against Salford. Look, it's 2 points on the ladder, that's the important thing, but something's not quite clicking, is it there?
No, it's not. No, they had an enormous weight of possession, didn't they, in that game, and obviously McDonald's 4 tries were brilliant for him, but I've no doubt that Brad Arthur would have probably liked to see, given the amount of possession that they had, would have liked to have seen a few more points than just the 6 that they registered after 40. But you're right, look, it's round 6 at the time, and 2 points in the bag, and when you get towards the back end of the season and you're in the playoffs, nobody really looks back and remembers round 6 away at Salford. It's about the 2 points, and they got it done.
Friday night, Kev, what a game this was at Craven Park. Wigan ultimately proving well they're champions, but for a lot of that game, it was just two heavyweights slugging it out, wasn't it?
Well, exactly that, and the heavyweights, Jared Weir-Hargreaves and Junior December, I thought really stood up because, sorry, I think they tried to get under his skin. The back row, Hadley was, the old bull against the young bull, and he almost unsettled him a little bit, but then I thought Junior came through the other side of that. Some of the lines he ran and some of the tries he scored under pressure, I thought that was a real turning point for Wigan's season, because they have looked beatable, they have looked like they've got weaknesses, but going into the derby on the back of, it's probably the toughest place to go over at Selwood Park. Hull KR undefeated. I thought there was a lot of things to really like about Wigan's performance, and the try and the transitional try where they threw the player into touch. I think it was Joe Burgess. He spills the ball back. Bevan French catches the ball, and then Jay Field just comes from nowhere and scores. That's what they've got, but they've also got that toughness now where they won't be bullied.
Yeah, Carl, you played in that Saints team that won, consistently for a period of time, like we're seeing Wigan do now.
Yeah.
It's almost that kind of habit, isn't it, of being able to stick into those tough games, that kind of hardness of once winning becomes what you know, it's a hard habit to get out of, and I think Wigan really showed that they've been successful in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. Look, they're a championship side coached by Matty Peat, Sean O'Loughlin, Tommy Luluai, and the work that they continue to do, plus the emergence of players like Kev's just said and Sember and the likes. But they're a quality team, and anybody who's thinking, for a moment about writing Wigan off is a fool. They are quality. They're a brilliant team, and obviously they showed that. For 70 minutes, that game was right on the money in terms of the highest of quality that we've had. Obviously, then Wigan ran away, but a special mention as well for Hull KR. Just another sellout crowd there. They are doing some brilliant stuff over there, and look, it's another fixture that we'll look further down the line when those two meet again, and I'm sure it'll be another great spectacle.
Gutted as well. Jared Weir-Hargreaves is retiring. I think he's brought so much already. Yeah. I thought he was sensational in the derby. I thought he was sensational. The battle between him and Sam Walters, you mentioned the heavyweights. I thought Sam Walters really stood up, but as a fan, gutted we're losing one of the best enforcers of a generation in Jared Weir-Hargreaves. Yeah,
it's a shame, isn't it, that we're only getting him for a year in the Betfred Super League, but like you say, he's already contributed so much. Also on Friday, Kyle, a better showing for St Helens against Wakefield, but the interesting part, I think, to come out of it, and we'll see how this develops over the kind of next days and weeks, but the way that they've just shifted that spine around, Whitby coming into the halves, Wellesby pushing into the halves, and Saylor at fullback with Lomax dropping out. What did you make of that first as a change?
Yeah, look, I thought it worked. I thought George Whitby was, considering he's 18-year-old, Lewis, and I think it's only his second game, I thought he was flawless. I say flawless. There was one kick that he kind of knocked over out on the full, but the rest of it, I thought his kicking game was sensational. Where he was landing those kicks each and every time on Tom Johnson's head just really stuck to the game plan. Something that Saints had been missing, their ability to sort of put boot to ball and end the sets really, really well. Saints have normally won games by going through a methodical process of that, of dropping kicks on 5 metres from the try line, Lewis, and then getting after them, and happy to stay in that cycle. They haven't been able to do that because they've not had any sort of quality of kick on the end of it. So I thought it really worked. He set up a nice try as well for Matt Whitley. So we asked Paul Wallens after the game, me and Dave Woods, we said about about the selection process now with Johnny Lomax not being playing. 4 can't really go into 3, can it? So it'll be interesting to see what happens, where each of those players, Saylor, Wellesby, Lomax and Whitby, how and where they feature. I think that'll be a really one that's going to unfold over the next 48 hours. And, I hope Whitby gets a crack again, because the big games, sometimes stars are born in those big games. I remember back to last year when it was Harry Robertson and Zach Eckelsley at fullback. I think Eckelsley got the number on him that day, but it's important that we see the next wave of players coming through, and I'm sure Kev will agree there's no better place than to test yourself in a derby like that.
No, I completely agree, but I'd say George Whitby's almost the most important out of them 4. If you look at Saints' successful period when Danny Richardson, Lachlan Coote, Lewis Dodd, they were all good kickers of the ball. I feel sorry for Johnny Lomax because he's had to take that responsibility, and Johnny Lomax is a sensational player. Yeah. He's done so much for the club, but he's never been a great kicker of the ball, but he's always had someone, and a balanced half-back combination is what you need. As soon as I saw Tristan Saylor, for me he looked like a fullback. They've already got one of the best fullbacks in the world in Jack Wellesby. They've moved him to 6 now, which at the expense of Johnny Lomax. I think it's almost Lomax or Tristan. I think if you put Wellesby back there and add Johnny Lomax and Whitby, I think that works too. I do feel sorry for Johnny, but I do think it's the right decision. I think they've got to have Whitby kicking the ball because they look a much more balanced, threatening side.
But you'll know better than most, Kev. We see kind of individual players interchanging spines all the time, whether it's injury or selection. To change, not the whole spine, because obviously the nime's the same, but that's not just moving a few players around. That was a full reshuffle in the 3 of the most important positions on the field. How difficult is it to get that right, straight away?
It's incredibly difficult, and I think that's a job that Lee Breers has probably been tasked with sorting from day one. He's had 6 weeks or so to get the kicking game going. But without the personnel, you can't just expect a kicking game to appear. George Whitby's a great kicker of the ball, but that's not all he can do. George Whitby's going to be a sensational player long term for St Helens. I just think Johnny Lomax and George Whitby still works.
Yeah.
But off the back of last week, the smart play is doing what you've seen work for the first time. Their attack looked more competent, it looked balanced, they were threatening on both sides. Wellesby's looked sharp all year, but Tristan Saylor looked effective too. So I think they'll go with that. I think Johnny Lomax may find himself on the bench covering a role. It may be hooker. It may be where he comes on as a hooker to speed the game up.
Look, I mean, we're not writing Johnny Lomax off at any stretch, but he is 35-year-old, and like what Whitby perhaps is in the infancy of doing in terms of stepping up and perhaps taking over that role in the next coming years. Johnny would have done that to a player at some point in his career. Kev, when you came in or when I came in, you have to, that's just the way sport works. And, maybe it is what Kev said. Maybe he does find himself in the middle and perhaps being used or utilised in a different way. We don't know, but what it is it's an option that Saints haven't had that now looks like an effective one moving forward.
Moving on, defeats again for Castleford and Huddersfield against Leeds and Catalans. And when you look at that league table, obviously Salford mitigating circumstances with the continued mess that's going on there. But that bottom 3, 7 weeks in, Kyle, is already looking like it's going to get cut adrift from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, it is. There's not really much going on down at the basement of Super League this year, is it? A couple of those teams all locked in on 2 points. But interestingly as well, without sort of skipping ahead, Lewis, if results go as you think they should do, Lee have got a very tough game and an important game against Warrington that could see Warrington slip down to 9th come the end of the. That's a massive game, that, and I know it doesn't sort of. I know there's still a 4-point buffer between 9th and the rest of those bottom 3, but at the end of Easter, that wouldn't be a good look for Sam Burgess and that club.
Right, Easter weekend, rivals round as we call it these days. 6 games, 5 of which genuine derbies. Obviously, Salford Catalans might be a slight push to call that a derby, but starts off with the return of one, the West Yorkshire derby, obviously missing for the Betfred Super League last season with Wakefield down in the Championship. But Wakefield, you'd put in as favourites on this one, Kev.
Yeah, I think Wakefield have been fantastic since they've come up. Disappointing last week at Saints. When they have been stretched, they've normally proved that they're there or thereabouts. I thought they were well beaten at Saints, but I watched Castleford over at home against in the last game, and I just thought they were poor. I thought attack-wise they were poor. I thought the 6 and 7 didn't really get any combination going, and I expect Wakefield, if they play anything like they've done recently, to almost blow this Castleford side away. If they get 20 points, I don't see Castleford having the ability to score that number of points.
Yeah, no, look, I think they've got. I think Castleford, obviously, they've just announced that Tom Malone's going to be coming over on loan, so that'll certainly help them when that starts. But I think they've just got. I think they've got the 2 worst halves in the comp at Castleford. I really do, and their inability to build or create or sustain any kind of pressure in a game. I think Assey, the six, he's coming up with so many mistakes with his boot. He's not even able to, again, talk about what George Bitby did in terms of building pressure. You know, the amount of times, the amount of games I've seen so many kick errors come through that player, it's just must be, Danny Maguire must be tearing his hair out, because they're just not able to get into any contest at any point, really. And then off the back of that, they're just getting rolled, and they're not defensively being able to show up to the party either. So I think there's a lot to be done at Cass.
On to Good Friday then, a rugby league institution, as we said. It's a day like no other. It starts off with an absolute belter. Two teams that need very little excuse to get stuck into each other. But as we have said, Kev, on this rarest of occasions, it's first versus second. I know it's only April. Let's not get carried away. But I tell you what, let's get carried away. Why not? Let's enjoy it.
It's going to be sensational. It's everything that we're so proud of and we speak so highly of about rugby league. It's passion, it's excitement, it's entertainment. I'm so excited to watch that as a fan. I think it's got two teams that can attack, two great coaches from Australia who demand an ethic, and I think what Hull FC have got now is they've got an ability where they're really tough to beat, but they've added key personnel. I think Aidan Caesar, I think it's career best form that he's playing. I think Will Price showed glimpses of what he will be in that black and white shirt. The run out of the backfield when, you know, he went down the left-hand channel, turned George Williams inside out. There's not many people can do that. And then you look at Hull KR as well, with Mikey Lewis, Minchella. They've got so much strike and so much passion. I think every one of them fans that go to that game, black or white or red and white, expect them to win the game, and we've not had that for a long, long time.
Carl, we'll talk about the Ashes at the end of the year. There's a test series feel to this. They've met each other so recently. It's going to be a packed house again. Brilliant. It's going to be electric.
Yeah, it's going to be unreal. And look, I'm going to stick up for the props here as well. We mentioned Jared Hargreaves. What about Herman SAS here? The form he's in as well. You know, I think
6 on the bounce. You didn't score 6 in your career.
You're not wrong. But what I will say is how much you know that cup game is going to be the motivator for Hull FC this week. You know, how much will they have learned that, you know, it was the 30 points to nil before Hull FC reacted in any kind of way in terms of registering a score. But, you know, how many lessons will be learned from that? Will that certainly help and make this game even closer? I think Hull KR will still win, but you know, I'm fully expecting to see a much more physical Hull FC in this game. They have to get that right. If they get that wrong again, you know, it'll just repeat itself. But I don't think they will. I think Hull FC will bring something to the party.
I think they need to score first in this one. If they score first, they've got a real big chance. The start of the game was poor, wasn't it? Was it 18-0 in the last game?
It was.
The start's crucial for them.
You mentioned Warrior Hargreaves and Herman SAS, and just a point I wanted to make, not just about those two, but these two sides in general. I was at the Hull Derby round 1 last season and watched Hull FC just tear themselves apart from the inside. I think 3 sin bins in the first 40 minutes, maybe one of them was a red card. They just looked a mess, discipline-wise. A lot of us made that joke about Jared Warrior-Hargreaves coming over, probably going to spend most of his time on the sidelines. He's been note perfect. Now, they're obviously two well-coached teams in the way that they're playing, Carl, but the discipline and the mentality and that side of the game as well, they both seem to have spot on. Now, look, we could have 4 players in a sin bin within the first 15 minutes as a derby, but it just feels like so much part of the success is down to a level of control as well.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think the sides that go on and win titles or win cups generally are the best defensive and the best disciplined as well. And discipline's obviously both sides of the ball, isn't it? You know, defence and attack. But you're right. I think again, it just all the ingredients are there for this to be an absolute humdinger, and I can't wait to watch that one before the Saints win.
I think they need to stand up to Jared Weir-Hargreaves, the Pat, because I did think he did a number on Herman SAS. In the previous round of the Cup. So I think Jared Weir-Hargreaves, he never takes a backward step. If they do stand up for him, or to him, I think he could end up being sat with you, Lewis.
Well, one man who experienced his first Hull derby a couple of weeks ago, John Cartwright. I went to catch up with the Hull FC boss yesterday. I watched that quarter-final of the BBC. I saw you in your kind of pre-match interview struggling to hear the people that were stood sort of half a foot either side of you. Did the intensity of it and the atmosphere around it almost surprise you, your first one?
I'd heard all about it, and we'd played a couple of games there earlier in the year, but the crowd noise was nothing like we experienced on the Cup day. Yeah, it was once you go out there and you settle into the way you play it, it's just a fantastic place to be. It's what every player sort of strives for. You want to play in big games in front of big crowds and play your best brand of footy. So we probably didn't quite do that on the day. So it's 2 weeks later we'll just see how we prepare for this one.
I know you're all in this job to play in finals, cup finals, grand finals, that kind of thing, but a game like Friday must feel like the next best thing.
Yeah, it's so steeped in history, and people in the town. That's all they sort of talk about. They don't even talk about grand finals too much, to be honest with you. It's always about the derby. So as players and as coaches, we have to sort of probably not buy into that so much. Certainly want to win, and we want to see our fans celebrate. But it's it's one game of 27. So we've got a long way to go in the season. But it is the experience that we're going to get certainly going to help us down the track. Yeah,
John Cartwright, Hull FC coach there, seems to be enjoying himself at the club. I think he did enjoy the atmosphere and the occasion 2 weeks ago. Not so much the result, an opportunity to put that right this week. But just one more point on this game, Jez, before we move on. We talk about at the end of the season, semi-finals and finals, and the running that teams have and how kind of battle-hardened they are coming into this. Well, they've played each other in a derby, and then since then, Hull KR have played Wigan, and Hull FC have played Warrington, another of the so-called top 4, top 5 you expect in around the playoffs. So they should be, Kyle, at an intensity akin to a semi-final. They've been playing in big games regularly. None of them have limped into this.
No. Well, I think the Hull KR Wigan game was different to the Hull FC Warrington game. But having said that, the intensity may be there over at Craven Park. But Hull FC's number that they did on Warrington, well, that's an almighty confidence lift, isn't it, heading into there. You mentioned Will Price, he was electric in that game, and in order to win big games, yes, everybody needs to be disciplined, but you still need your best players to find their best game if you're going to win games of this magnitude that we're looking at this week.
So we start off the show in Hull, and then at 3 o'clock we move to the Brick Community Stadium for Wigan versus St Helens. In the cherry and white corner, Kev Brown, representing St Helens, Kyle Amor. Gents, just have at it on this one. Go on.
It's copy and paste again, isn't it? It's entertainment. For me, it's the best game in the world. This Wigan Saints. Yeah. Everyone wants a ticket. It's been sold out for over a month. Kyle's after tickets today, actually. He's left it late. But I just think where Saints are, I think they're a real danger to Wigan in this game. I expect George Whitby, he'll just play completely free of any pressure. He will looked at this game so many times as a fan, and he'll be pinching himself going into it. He'll be playing on adrenaline, and he's a real danger because he's so hard to do any video on, because his kicking game, it's all new. You don't know which foot he steps off. Yeah. And I think once you start looking at a player, other players will pop up. Jack Wellesby's got a game in him. I do expect Wigan to be the favourites, and I do expect Wigan, if everything goes to form, to win this game. But my worry for Wigan is George Whitby.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kev. I think the bookies will no doubt have Wigan as favourites. I agree with that. But I mentioned it earlier that these games, sometimes, or whether it be people like Whitby, where again a star is born, if you like, or just the players, the usual suspects, Field, French, Wellesby, those guys just stepping up and delivering. But for me, my favourite derbies were always playing at Wigan, and I don't know why. I like the idea that we were going into the Lions' Den, if you almost like, and we only had sort of one terrace of St Helens fans, and it's just such a good atmosphere playing at the DW. It really is. I don't recall winning too many times there, but
sent off there, didn't you? Weren't you?
Yes. Thanks for reminding me about that. That was in a Good Friday game as well, but. Yeah, if St Helens can get a win there, they are special wins. They're special wins for and the ones that kind of that can boost morale for a number of weeks. It can almost take a little bit of pressure off you. The magnitude of the result of this game is quite significant, I think, and Form always goes out the window. It's who wants it between the ears, who's willing just to bite down and work a little bit harder in moments where you feel you've got nothing else to give, and I can't wait. I really can't.
What you've got difference with the coaching staff, all 6 of that coaching staff have played in these derbies.
Yeah.
All 3 for Saints, all 3 for Wigan. They've felt it, they've smelt it, they've breathed it
It's
all the
different,
life.
isn't it?
It is different.
It's different.
The Australian coaches for Hull KR and Hull FC, very good coaches, and they will try and buy into this. But they've been born into this, and they're gonna feed it to the players. I think the fact that Paul Wellington and Matty Pete, St Helens through and through, Wigan through and through, they're going to wear their out on the sleeves. This is going to be an absolute monumentous game.
And 24,000. I've been at some big crowds at that stadium over the years. The World Club Challenge last year obviously stands out. That was almost entirely Wigan fans. The Saints fans will make plenty of noise, but Carl, that atmosphere, there's almost an element of skill in dealing with that, isn't there, for the players?
Yeah, I think it's, the experienced players will be telling the young players, whoever can settle down quick and get into the game, get a feel, get a carry, make a tackle, just get into it as quick as you can and calm down and try and let all that external noise just disappear. Like Kev will tell you, as a player, once you're out there, you feel it when you walk out, but when the whistle blows, it's tunnel vision. All the external stuff, you don't really even see it or notice it. So it's important that you rise to the occasion, really. And I just can't wait. In fact, I don't miss playing the game at all, one bit. But there's certain games that when you see the players enter to the arena, you think, well, I won't mind just having one of those little moments again. But we get to sit up safe in the gantry, don't we?
Yeah.
Final calls on Friday. Leeds welcome winless Huddersfield to Heading League. Kev, Luke Robinson must have smashed a lot of mirrors before this season, because their injury record is horrendous in the first 7 weeks of this year.
Well, he called it an epidemic, and it is. And you feel for him. He's brought Niall Evans in. He got injured after 20 minutes. He's brought Leyland in from Hull KR, got concussed. Whatever they do, and it's not the same injuries. Sometimes you've got to look at your conditioning stuff. You've got to look where you're training. But they're not all soft tissue. Some are breaks. Some are concussions, some are broken jaws, some are broken hands. I think they're just going on a horrific run. And what I've known when I've been playing, when you get a tough run of injuries, you ask more of the resources that you've got left, and they start breaking too. It will change. Luke Robinson's difficulty in the situation, what he's got to manage is keeping the confidence up for when them players come back, that the resolve and everything has not already gone. I've been in situations myself like this. What you can't say is, it doesn't matter, we're injured. You've got to go, right, backs against the wall, let's go and have it, let's go and ambush them, let's have little goals, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If we can win the first 5, if we can win the first 10, and then they're in the game, they'll surprise themselves. But at the minute, it's a very poor-looking side and a very toothless-looking Giants.
Yeah. Leeds come into this game as heavy favourites again, as they did against Salford. But given the nature of that performance against Salford, you kind of get the impression that a win isn't enough here, is it?
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into that. It's very difficult. The coaching staff and the players will say that they were totally focused on the job in hand. But going to Salford right now, given that everything that's going on, I'm not saying that they could almost be forgiven to, sometimes, and you see it often as well.
They won 26-0. It wasn't. No,
exactly. But
they got the job done.
You see it when Super League sides go to a championship ground and they play. You kind of drop to that level, knowing that deep down that whatever happens, you've got enough to win. And I think maybe Leeds might that just be one of them games. I wouldn't read too much into that, but I think obviously Leeds up against Huddersfield. Kev's right. All them injuries. It's what Luke Robinson's probably got the horrible sort of looking into the future of it is that the players pretty much know that this season is gone. After 7 games, if they lose again, there isn't really a way back, and they're out the cup. How as a coach do you galvanise that group to find reasons why to get excited about playing, knowing that there's nothing really to chase, if you know what I mean? I suppose that comes down to an individual pride thing, but yeah, it's
there are some bright lights. I think young George Flanagan's really stood up. He's come on
signed
to
a
the
new
scene.
deal, hasn't he? There,
and he looks all apart, but
it's
they've
difficult,
just got
isn't
so much class out. What I do think is Burgess needs to step up. He's a marquee player, he's an international player. I think we've not seen enough out of him to say, yeah, he's carrying that pack.
But again, one guy can't really. It would be nice to have Burgess playing with all the pieces that should be in and around him.
Well, you slot Jared Weir-Hargreaves in there. I think he's a cornerstone of the pack. We've just been waxing lyrical about him. I think George Burgess needs to have the same kind of impact at that club. You know, as a marquee player, I think he needs to step up now.
Moving into Saturday, I think this game could be a lot of fun. Lee Leopards against Warrington, Kev. I can't really work out what happens in this game.
There's been a bit of a grudge over the last couple of years. Obviously, the Josh Charnley situation, him leaving, going there. There was, Maguire called him out. I think Lee are playing pretty well. I was actually unimpressed with them against Castleford, but it's a similar sort of situation as Leeds. They got the job done. They won quite comfortably. They've got a lot of very good players. And at the minute, I just think Warrington's defence is a little bit frail. I thought, Hull FC exposed that, especially in the first half. And if they have a first half like that against Lee, it could be anything. Sam Burgess has got a big job on his hands to get that confidence back and get that resilience back that he had last year, because for whatever reason, the lack of trust or personnel, it's just not firing at the moment.
I think it's consistency that he needs to try and drum into his players. Again, Warrington, they're hit and miss. I think back to when they got I'll call it destroyed by Wakefield at home. Although the scoreboard may not suggest that, Wakefield were all over them, moving the ball at will, and the defensive movements just weren't what they needed to be. And then they have a good win against Saints, and then they lose against Hull. The consistency for them to go on and challenge and be a top four side, they need to get that.
And that's
right.
a mentality, Kyle, isn't it? When they're in front, they seem like they're one of the best teams in the competition. When they go behind, you sort of worrying, is it like Hull FC were? They're great front runners, but when they go behind, the confidence just goes, and the crowd get on them, and it just plummets. And that's what happened against Hull FC. Yeah. And by the time they got the momentum back, it was just too much of an ask.
Rounding off the weekend, Catalans against Salford. Second times in 2 weeks that we've seen this fixture as well. As we touched on heavily, Catalans will go into this favourite for the obvious reasons, but they're another team that have kind of blown, lukewarm and cold throughout the season, and they need a performance.
More cold than warm, I would say, Lewis. But look, it's an important 2 points for Steve McNamara, and one that they should collect fairly comfortably. Mind you, Salford give him a good run, didn't they, over in Perpignan? So, will we see a repeat of that? Will it be a contest or will it be a blowout? You just don't know, do you? Whenever you're focusing on a Salford game, the last couple of weeks actually they've had a crack, haven't they? Do you know what I mean? So, again, which Catalan outfit turns up, we'll have to find out.
I think the longer this saga at Salford goes on, the less likely they look at getting wins.
Yeah.
They've had, watched them against Huddersfield, they were brilliant. Then they went to Catalans, a little bit less. They went against Leeds, much less, and I expect them to get well beaten at Catalans. Catalans have got too many good players. I feel sorry for the Salford players. The way they've just been put through it. It's like death by
mentally
1,000
tortured,
cuts
aren't
at the
they?
minute.
Really, mentally tortured now physically, because they're having to dip into getting inexperienced players in there, which is making those seasoned pros that are left. It's making their job increasingly harder. I've no doubt over the next week or two we'll probably see more of those top 17 players that are left at Salford leaving the club. It's just an absolute saga, and one that needs put out of its misery for me.
Just final point before we wrap up, Carl. You mentioned senior players. It's someone I know that you know, Chris Hill. If there's one person who's in that situation at Salford who really seems to have put his hand up on the field and carried through, Chris Hill. He wasn't even at the club last season. He's no particular reason to be loyal to that club, but he just seems to be putting himself through the trenches.
That's what Chris Hill does. He played, regardless what shirt he puts on. I think he was the best player. I think he got the man of the match in the World Cup final for England that day. And, whenever he plays, he does big minutes. Yeah. He's an honest bloke. And I think at the side of him as well, Jack Ormonroyd's doing the same. But how much can you ask? Chris Hill's not got them young lads anymore where you can't consistently ask someone like Chris Hill to do it every week. He will put his hand up and try his best. He's an honest bloke, and he will work his blood to water. But there comes a time where you need to spell him, you need to rest him to get that quality out of him as well.
I think even at Chris Hill's age now, and the level of performance and what he's doing, for me, he's put himself in the shop window to go to another club. He can still continue to play at this level very, very comfortably. So, look, again, it's just going to get harder and harder, like Kev said, harder and harder for players like himself and all the other senior players that are left, because, what's coming in isn't replacing what's going out, and it's just spiralling south, isn't it?
Right, gents, I could do another hour of this, but we won't. We'll wrap up just very quickly. Easter weekend, how much looking forward to it, Kev?
It's like Christmas Day. That's all I can say. There's so many games, there's so many ties that I don't know who's going to win the game. But one thing for sure is I can't wait for the Hull derby and the Saints Wigan derby. I think them two alone are my favourite games of the season.
Yeah, no, you can't look past those two games, can you? Obviously, look, the rest of the competition are going to battle it out in rivals round, and for each of those, those sets of fans, that they'll all say that their game's the most important. But Friday afternoon, Hull KR Hull and Saints Wigan, wow, we just can't wait.
Pleasure, gents. As always, strap yourselves in. As Kev says, Easter is Rugby League Christmas. Enjoy it.